Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Yay Emacs. I'm Sasha Chua, and today is February 4, 2024. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to brain dump an upcoming talk, maybe an upcoming lightning talk for LibrePlanet. I want to talk about community plumbing, and if there's time, I'd like to share some of the little snippets that I've added to my Emacs configuration this week. Okay, so community plumbing. I wanted to put together a lightning talk for LibrePlanet, which happens to have the topic of the theme of building communities. I'm really interested in the kinds of communities that people build around the things that they care about, like Emacs for me, but also lots of other free software projects out there that people build their communities around, and not just, of course, geek stuff, but also even interest based things. And I want to show people that it does take a lot of effort to do the community plumbing that helps information flow better. And anybody could do it. You could do it too. So I want to see if I can make you a 5-minute talk or so that shows what you do with Emacs and encourages people to go try this out for their own communities. So if you think about the flow of ideas in a community, uh, there are little things you can do to help things flow better, and you don't have to be an expert in order to do them. You don't have to be someone who's really famous in the community or advanced in their usage or whatever else. You can just do little things to help make those ideas flow better. And you don't have to, if you're going to use this analogy of pipes and flowing, you don't even have to fill the pipes yourself. You don't have to be the one coming up with interesting content regularly or whatever you want to think of it as. You can just help share what's already out there. So I want to share some of the things that we're doing in the Emacs community to help things flow better. And I want to convince people, you specifically, if that's possible, that doing this kind of community plumbing is fun, it's easy, and it actually has a great effect on making things better. And this is fantastic because if you can help things flow better, then that enthusiasm spreads. When people connect with other people who are fascinated by the same things, they can bounce ideas off each other and share what they're working on. So all of that is goodness. So in the Emacs community, it actually mostly started with having a blog aggregator. So most blogs will have some kind of RSS feed that lets people subscribe for updates. And with a tool like Planet Venus, which is a blog aggregator, you can collect the updates from lots of different blogs in one place to make it easier for people to just scroll through that and see what's new. For us, it's Planet Emacs Live, which is actually the second incarnation of this. It used to be planetemacs.org on Tess O'Connor's server, but then that server died and was hard to restore. So anyway, we're back up now on planetemacslive.com. And this is pretty much automated. I just do a little bit of updating every so often when people say, oh, I have this new blog, here's my RSS feed. I put it in the configuration file, and then every hour that the program just goes and fetches the new updates from all the blogs, giving people one place to go, which is great because it saves people time. They don't have to go to all these different blog posts themselves. So that's fantastic. Blog aggregator, if your community doesn't have one yet, it's very easy to set up, and it's very convenient. Of course, there are lots of other things that aren't put on blogs. People post videos on YouTube and PeerTube and other places. They might have posts on Reddit or Hacker News or Lobsters. They might have Toots and Mastodon. There are lots of other places where people share things. So if you have a way to go to these places and just keep an eye out for interesting news in those areas, then you can start collecting that as well and help those ideas flow better. We have a weekly newsletter, which I put together. It really just takes me an hour or two each week to go through this, these updates from Reddit and from Planet Emacs Live and all those other things, and select the ones that I want to include. I like putting them into categories, which I think it actually takes me the most time, because then I like to read things to get a sense of what they're about, and then I get distracted by all the cool Emacs Lisp snippets that I want to put in my configuration. So, but it's a newsletter doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it doesn't have to be very fancy. I find that I still don't have the time to write a lot of commentary for it. So my newsletter is really just a categorized list of links, and that seems to be all right. And it's useful enough for people to subscribe to it and share it with other people and so on. Now, among the things that I include in this newsletter are upcoming events from different user groups. So you have people sometimes like to meet each other, both online and in person, and talk about the things they're interested in, which is fantastic. Many of these user groups have some kind of calendar that I can subscribe to just get the event updates. So if your community has something like this as well, see if you can use that to automate the updates that might go into your newsletter. Some of them don't have a calendar, but they'll tell me about the regular meetings, and then I can create an entry in my own calendar and incorporate that into the newsletter. So I used to check all of these posts manually, but I've since then built a little bit of infrastructure so that all these things can be included in the Emacs calendar. And then I can use the iCal from that, include them in the newsletter so that I don't have to do the time zone conversions myself. And then, of course, an extension of the user group idea is to have some kind of conference. It turns out to be fairly inexpensive to organize your own conference for something. So, for example, with Emacs Conf, we get about maybe 200 people watching it live, and the whole thing can be done on less than $50 US of hosting costs, and a whole load of of awesome speakers, and we have we get up to like 2 tracks and lots of talks, and there are volunteers who come and help with the captioning the talks beforehand, so that's a nice bonus as well because the text makes it easier to search and skim through afterwards. So conferences are a great way to get people who are passionate about something to come together and connect and have those conversations, and then those videos become things that inspire people throughout the rest of the year. So there, just all these very, very small things that can be put together to keep the ideas flowing in a community. And the amazing thing about that is that they actually, the pieces help each other. So for example, I mentioned how the blog aggregator can help with a newsletter because it gives you stuff to put in the newsletter. And it makes it easy to just go through the list. I actually have the RSS feed automatically included in my newsletter, and then I can just categorize it from there. So I'm not even copying the links manually. Okay, so you've got the blog aggregator feeding newsletter, but then people start looking at the newsletter and then writing blog posts about the interesting things that they come across because of the newsletter. And likewise, I've seen a lot of the user groups start to refer to the newsletter as a way to fill in any extra time. So it makes it easier for people who might otherwise be a little nervous about standing there by themselves or with a few other people, and there's a lot of dead space and silence because nobody knows what to talk about. Now they can just pull out the newsletter and go through it and see what spikes people's interest, and then all of that again inspires people, brings people together, and turns into ideas for conference talks and so on. So this is an example of how a little bit of community plumbing helps ideas go around faster. It helps ideas circulate. And I think that this is something that lots of people can do in their own communities, even if you don't feel like an expert, you don't feel like you have much to add, even if you don't feel like you have much time. I have very little computer time. This is basically it. But I have maybe 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. I can scroll through Reddit on my phone and upload the posts that I want to include on my in my next newsletter. I can look on Mastodon for toots that I want to share to my orgsly so that I can take notes and then include that in the newsletter. Anyway, so this is something you can do with very little time, and it is a lot of fun. One of the things I really look forward to every week is being able to see in the process of making Emacs news all the cool stuff that people have come up with. So it's something that's personally very useful for me, and it happens to be useful for other people. That's a nice bonus, but really I'm getting a lot of selfish benefits out of it. And I think that if you put together a newsletter for the stuff that you're interested in, then you'll also get a lot of benefits out of that too. So it'll be fun. Building processes and tools is a great help, of course, to make it easier for you. So instead of copying things manually, maybe you can automatically get a list of things, and then you can just delete the ones that you don't like. So a little bit of automation doesn't have to be built all at once. You can do a little bit and then try it out, add more to your newsletter. For example, I've got this section on new packages, and I am definitely not keeping track of that by hand. I just have a bit of code that gets the all the packages from all the archives and then compares it with the list that it saved last week. So as you get into figuring out what you want your community plumbing to look like, you can build the tools to make it easier for you to do this and to, save time. So you don't have to do the tedious stuff. You can focus on the fun stuff instead. And the last tip that I want to share in terms of community plumbing is that once you get the ball rolling, sometimes people want to help out. They'll send you interesting links that you can include. Or as in the case of Emacs Develop, the mailing list is too hard for me to follow because they're talking about all sorts of things, and there's a lot of volume, and I'm like just scrolling through things on my phone. But people like Andres Ramirez send me like notes on the different threads that have been going on, so that becomes something that I can quickly include. People are out there who can help, might not get things started on their own, or might want to just contribute to something that already exists, but once it's out there, then they can come in and contribute to it. So it's community plumbing, very easy to do. Doesn't take a lot of work, can be a lot of fun, and there are little pieces that you can build that get things flowing faster. So blog aggregator, newsletter, calendars, little things that you can do to help people find stuff. In the show notes, I have a list of links to the stuff that we have for the Emacs community, such as the blog aggregator, planetemacslife.com, the Emacs News newsletter, different searches that I like to use to find stuff on YouTube and Reddit and Hacker News and all these other places. Mastodon, there's a lovely little Emacs focused instance. People also talk about all sorts of other things, but there's actually like an Emacs instance for Mastodon, which makes it easy to bump into other people. So I think that's awesome too. And Emacs news file, different package archives, the Emacs Eval mailing list, the user groups page. I actually keep this up to date with upcoming events too, so it's it makes it easy for people to see what's coming up. And emacsconf.org. But in addition to the Emacs stuff, I also have links to other projects, planets and newsletters, so that you can get an idea of how other people do things. And I think it's fantastic that there's such a wide range. A lot of the planets will use Planet Venus as well, the same aggregator that we're using. It's pretty old, hasn't been updated in like more than a decade, but some of them use more recent tools. Newsletters, there are a whole bunch. There are some that are weekly, there are some that are monthly, some with a lot of analysis, and some that are just also a list of links. So you can check that out for ideas. Linux Weekly News has a calendar that they keep of conferences, so that's another way to check out what other people are doing conference-wise. And of course, there are lots of user groups. So if you're involved in some kind of interest community, please consider doing some of that community plumbing, because it makes it easier to discover interesting things and connect people to each other. It doesn't take a lot of work, it doesn't take a lot of expertise, and it is a lot of fun. So that's my quick brain dump. I'm going to find a way of condensing the 15 minutes of that brain dump, not like 15 minutes, into a 5-minute talk. But one of the things that I want to do with this time for Yay Emacs is start to take some of these sketches and ideas and flush out the words around them, because speech recognition is really surprisingly awesome at turning that kind of a brain dump into words that I can then edit. And as I mentioned, I don't have a lot of computer time, so I am going to use this to do the writing and the thinking and all of that stuff out loud. But other things I wanted to include here, just in case I have time before the kiddo wakes up, are little things that I tweaked in my Emacs configuration this week. So word diffs I actually had for a little time now, because when I edit transcripts when I edit the captions for Emacs Conf talks, sometimes I want to compare them with a script And so I added a little thing to subed, which is a major mode for editing subtitles, for using the wdiff command line tool. And this is actually, it turned out to be super useful, and I wanted to keep using it for other things as well. So normal diff will show you the difference between a file or your buffer in terms of lines. Let's do that here with some lorem ipsum text here. So let's say that, this text here. And I can diff buffer with a file. Whoops, where am I? Diff buffer with file. So if we look at this here, it'll show you the lines that have changed in green with a plus on them. And so metax diff buffer with file will will compare your unsafe buffer with a file that's on your hard disk or SSD or whatever has been saved. But it works with lines. So here, for example, you've got that line over there. If you have another line, you can save that. I have this thing automatic. So now I have the save. But if I make a change here, let's say, for example, if I put a hello world here, diff buffer with file will show me that the entire line has been removed and the entire line has been changed. There's a little bit of highlighting to show me which words have like specifically changed, but it's a little harder to tell. So I have this my wdiff buffer with file function. And what it does is it shows me that diff, and it just highlights the specific part that has changed. What the wdiff command line tool does is it takes the diff output and then it refines it to show just the words that have changed, and then it can highlight that specifically. Now, how does this work? So here's a little bit of just wrapping around a shell command. So I've got here a my wdiff function that takes an old file and a new file. The interactive call asks for the file name, so I can compare two different files if I wanted to. And all it does is it calls the process wdiff. The wdiff is a command line tool that you can install. It's the one that does all the hard work of figuring out the actual words that have changed. And then a little bit of font locking or highlighting it with different colors. So going to the beginning of the buffer output and then looking for that regular expression to look for where the additions or deletions have occurred. And then just adding either the diff removed or the diff added face. So if there are command line tools that have some kind of useful output, and you want to color them differently in Emacs, it's fairly easy to write an Emacs Lisp function that will do that for you. And I think there's probably a package out there that does this kind of font locking for wdiff and calls it and everything, but it was super short, and I can just, it's easy enough to just write the function instead of looking for the package. Anyhow, so that's wdiff. It's really helpful for pros because if you're writing lots of words, sometimes it doesn't make sense to do them as words, like separate lines sometimes. And in fact, when I do transcripts, when I'm looking at word differences for transcripts, I have it squish everything on one line so that I don't have to worry about any white space changes. Anyway, so wdiff, useful thing. And another interesting thing that I found out this week was that actually my laptop's touch screen works with like multi-touch gestures, which I can't believe it's so this is the first time I've gotten around to trying it out. So I can like two finger scroll and it does the scrolling thing, and then I can do like a pinch to zoom. Let's see if it works. Oh, I have to make sure I'm in the right area here. Whoops. Okay, so yes, it does do it eventually when it kicks in, and then let me see if I can zoom back. Yeah, so that's me like using my pinch gestures to mess around with that, which slightly less useful. But I wanted to share a snippet that I've borrowed from somebody else's configuration. John Kitchen shared these using Mac gestures in Emacs, and in this post, he shared that you can use this to slow down the swipe to set up swiping, so I can swipe left and swipe right to go to the previous and next buffer, but to slow it down enough so that it's useful instead of just go whooshing through all these buffers. So if I swipe very carefully, so I can just use the two fingers swiping left and swiping right in order to make that change, which now makes me think, okay, what can I play? How do I play around with this? And there's a strokes package. So strokes lets you control the Emacs using mouse strokes. My laptop comes with a stylus, which I've been using to split words in transcripts because I like my captions to be a certain length. So when I'm doing the subtitles, I like to split them at about 60 characters if we're displaying them on screen, and maybe a little less than that if we're displaying them in the regular video player on a web page versus broadcasting it in Emacs Con. Anyway, so I use the stylus a lot during that part because it's easy to just tap on the word that I want to split at. So now that I'm playing around with touch more, I'm very curious about whether I can use the strokes package to do the pile sorting idea that I mentioned previously on one of these Yay Emacs live streams. So pile sorting or card sorting is when you take a pile of things and you sort them, you just sort them roughly into piles. So you might say, okay, this stuff goes over here, that stuff goes over there. And I'm thinking this might be an interesting way to think about sorting my inbox, because I don't necessarily want to go through all the steps of refiling something. Refiling takes a little while on my computer, even with a subset of refiling targets that I've been playing around with. But if I can sort them into piles, I can say, okay, this pile will eventually get refiled into this project, and this file will eventually get refiled into this other place, and so forth. So if I can make like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 piles, then maybe I could use this swiping or stroke idea, mouse gestures, to just fling something into the appropriate pile. Whether it's northwest or north or northeast or south or all those other cardinal directions. So that might be a future thing to play around with. I don't usually use the mouse when I'm using Emacs, but if we're going to, it might be fun to do that. And it might also be fun to think about it using touchscreens as well. Like, can I swipe left and swipe right to do something interesting with org subtrees? We'll see. So that's what I've got for that section. And somewhere in here, okay, here we go. And let me get back to wherever I was. Okay. And last little bit of thing that I can probably squeeze in before the kiddo wakes up. Someone was curious about my Yay Emacs streaming setup, and it's basically this. I've got this. So this is my current setup, where I've got this external monitor, which is now the one I'm actually sharing, so that it's higher res than the, kind of really tiny monitor that I, well, not really tiny, but the X230T is a small computer, so resolution is 720 when I'm 720p when I'm streaming. So at least this one will get us a bit bigger. So the actual computer that's running everything is the X230T, because it's very comfortable. I like it. It's already all set up and everything. But since it doesn't have the horsepower to do OBS streaming itself, I actually am using Video Ninja to share it to the Surface Book. And the Surface Book is the one that uses OBS to then send everything to YouTube. There's a Blue Yeti over there that's plugged into the Surface Book. There's a webcam that's plugged into the Surface Book, so that allows me to start doing this, hand gestures thing. Yes, and then there's a light and all that stuff. It turns out, so I mentioned I don't have a lot of computer time. The kiddo gets screen envy. If I'm on a screen, she's got to be on a screen too. So it's hard for me to squeeze in screen time, like programming time during the day, because then she's like, then I want to keep watching, YouTube videos. Which is okay when I need to bribe her with screen time, but I shouldn't let her do it for too long, because then I feel guilty as a parent. So drawing, on the other hand, I can get I can get away with because she doesn't get too envious about that. And then when I'm waiting for her, or when I'm walking around or doing chores or whatever else, then I can use Google Recorder to do brain dumps so that I can use speech recognition, usually through the DeepGram API, so I can use OpenAI Whisper without overloading my computer. And then all of that stuff goes into org mode in Emacs, where I prepared notes and turn the transcript into something more coherent. It goes into the 11D static site generator, goes out to my website. And lately I've starting to slowly figure out the workflow for converting the YouTube videos into our own, WebM archive things, and then doing the speech recognition in that one and posting that up on the web. So now, for example, for the show notes for last week, it's like synchronized with the transcript timestamps and everything. So it's little steps forward. Next steps, I'm getting better at not doing the okay, are we live? Is this on? That sort of thing. So I'm starting to trust that when it says it's live, it's live. Sure. I decided to move my posts out of the stream notes so that they're just on my blog, and then there's a link to the stream notes so people can go find the previous episodes. Working on smoothing that WebM conversion so that I don't have to think about it. It just happens. Timestamp synchronization happened, hooray! And then the next step is I want to be able to extract the media files, turn them into podcast enclosures, and set up the iTunes channel information and all of that stuff so that people can also listen to it as just a podcast. And I'll try my best to remember that sometimes people will not be able to see what's on my screen. Okay, so that's another thing that people wanted me to explain, so that's there. Charlie mentions that the pile thing sounds like the stack method of getting through email, which I would love to hear more about. I will go look that up later. My current approach to getting through email is that I don't, but that's okay because we're trying to, just trying to keep my life low commitments, and again, not much computer time. I'd rather spend it coding or writing than responding to email sometimes. So I will accept that most of my email replies will be top posted and done from my phone. But stack method sounds very interesting, and generally, like pile sorting in general, is very useful in real life when you're trying to go through a lot of stuff. So I'm trying to look for ways to make that happen on the computer as well. Yes, so I'm going to drink some water now. Woo-hoo. Okay. All right. So, great. Now I get to do the thing which I just talked about, which is I haven't actually had a lot of time to code today, code this week. So, code-wise, I don't have fascinating blog posts to show, but there's always the Emacs needs to go over and share the interesting things that people have been sharing over this past week. So I can point you to other cool stuff. And feel free to ask questions in the chat so I can go back to any previous topic or and bring up more details. I don't know. So in last week's Emacs news, we had a bunch of I always have lots of things in different categories. For Emacs configuration, it was interesting to see two posts on digging into Emacs performance or problems with your Emacs configuration. There's why is my Emacs slow, and there's debugging Emacs. Kind of just trying to find the problem points. The profiler is very helpful for finding slowness, and also bisecting your Emacs configuration can help with finding errors. And things that run but don't do what you want them to do. So it brought to mind the fact that there's a bug hunter package, and it's been a while since I've used this, but it might be useful to other people as well. So what bug hunter does is it does that bisection for you. So bisection is the idea of commenting out half of your Emacs configuration or whatever else, and then seeing if that works. So first you comment out the second half and you run your configuration and you see if you're getting the problem. And if that works then you split the second half, and you try to find the problem there and so forth. You're always cutting things in half, and you're working with smaller and smaller pieces until you can identify the specific expression that's causing you problems. I actually it depends on what kind of error I'm looking for. Sometimes I will just open up my tangled Emacs Lisp configuration and then record a keyboard macro that goes forward one expression and then executes the last expression. So the keyboard macro is very easy to keep repeating until there's an error. But if there's something more complicated, like I have to do a lot of steps in order to reproduce the problem, then Bug Hunter is helpful for that, because it does that kind of splitting up for you, and then it'll ask you, it'll either allow you to specify an assertion, something that can automatically check if the error is present, or if there's an interactive thing that you need to do in order to find out whether you have a problem, then it can also prompt you. So that's the Bug Hunter package. Highly recommend when weird things are happening with your Emacs configuration. All right, Emacs Lisp, Mike Zemansky has released another episode of Learning Emacs, so he dives deeper into how to use Emacs Lisp to build a thesaurus. And then there's another post on using cl-flet to override a function. Now, sometimes you'll want to run something, but you want to tweak the way that it works. And sometimes you can do that by using a hook. If the authors of the code had the foresight of including the appropriate hooks. And sometimes you can do that with advice. But if you're only doing it temporarily, like you don't want your change to happen all the time, but just for this particular call, and you're trying to modify something that's not directly in that function, but maybe a layer or two down it, then cl-flet allows you to it's like the way you can use let to change the value of a variable while you're, when you call a different function. cl-flet lets you override a function just for the calls that you're going to make. And it does it not just for this direct call, but also for the functions that function called, and so on and so forth. So cl-flet lets you change the function that is being used. And Simon Dobson's post goes into a lot more detail. It is very hacky when you need to use it, but sometimes that's what you got to do. ert-results, there's a package here that allows you to get more views. So if you're writing tests for your Emacs Lisp, ert is a popular package for doing so, and there is a package for displaying the results in different ways, which I haven't looked into, but it looks useful when you're dealing with a lot of tests. There's been some further discussion on this. I just wanted Emacs to look nice. I think Hacker News had a big thread on it recently with over 170 comments. So in addition to this thread, I think there was one like a few days ago that talked about how terminals are complicated. And then there's more stuff in colors and transparency. I often need help focusing, as you can probably tell. So somebody posted this tip for maximizing buffers, but saving the window configuration, and then somebody else pointed out that if you've got winter mode, you get that for free. So I'm still getting the hang of using winter mode myself. Just getting my brain used to the idea of going back to a window configuration. Actually, maybe that's a good use of the swiping. Instead of using the swiping to shift buffers, which I can do fairly comfortably with Control XB, then I can just use the swiping as my mouse gesture, like touch gesture for switching window configurations. Worth a try. Okay. Yeah, so that's cool. Org mood. Lots of people sharing their workflows. Workflows for writing a book in Emacs and org mode. There's a YouTube video on that. Workflows for studying vocabulary. So if you're not quite at the level of writing a book, you're still learning lots of words, that's okay too. Org mode's got something for you. Using a checklist to keep track of your shopping list. This post was about using Orgsly with a checklist to do the grocery list, and then somebody else in the comments said that they basically just export something that uses JavaScript to give them a checkable checkbox, which is another interesting technique. And yeah, so more org mode in real life. The basic citations in org has another post. So if you're interested in writing scientific papers and other things like that, org mode has citation support to make that easier for you. And so a couple of interesting resources for completion. This one I think is this one is more about Ivy and Council, which you don't see as many posts about these days. If you do use Ivy, then that's definitely worth checking out. That's Martin Fowler's post on improving my Emacs experience with completion. And then coding, there was a long video on compile and other things you can do with a compile command, including setting file specific compile commands, which is helpful, and not just compile in the traditional way we think of, you have a command, you have some source code, you compile it in the program, but also compile as in I always want to run these commands after I edit this file. So it could be a configuration file, and then your compile command could restart the service that uses that configuration file, for example. So that's Compile with Confidence, a deep dive into compiling code with Emacs, which is 15 minutes and worth checking out. And let's see where I am. Yes. So going back to the window configurations, Common Reddy shares using registers, which is the same technique as discussed in the Reddit post. The function in the Reddit post about window configurations, this kind of temporarily maximizing your window is what the Reddit thread was called. The function save the window configuration to a register to make it easier to restore. And so that's definitely a useful technique. A couple of LSP related things. And there was this interesting one about have you ever sent an email with a file attachment that is located on a server? Where what Christian did was use the dired, I think, to look for a file that was remote. Because you can easily work with files on different computers by using tramp. Yeah. Okay. So Christian used dired to get to a server over SSH, and then find the file, and then used embark to attach the file to a mail composition buffer, which is fascinating. And it made me start thinking about whether you could maybe use the org store link mechanism as well. So you store the link, and then instead of inserting the link somewhere else, you might just have an attach file from a stored link, and it would figure out the location to attach. So that way you can go back to the mail buffer that you want to insert it into, and you can insert that there. So this one, this function uses snooze, but it's fairly easy to do that with just a regular MML attach as well. So you don't have to use snooze for this. If you're using not much, you can use that to insert it. So because Emacs lets you use tramp to work with files on remote systems as easily as you do on your system, attaching something from somewhere far away is actually fairly straightforward. So, cool stuff. New Emacs as a comic book reader is in the fun category. This got picked up a bit in Mastodon as well. I saw some people tooting about it because fun. So comic books are often packaged as archives that have the image files in them, and Emacs can understand archive files, and Emacs can understand images. So you can just put that together with a little bit of help in like flipping the pages, apparently you can read comics inside Emacs. which makes me start thinking about like, okay, well, what else can we do with images in Emacs? And a little bit later in this blog post, actually, Anand, I think, shares there's a magnifier with in a recent blog post, I think. Anand shares using adding a magnifier to the thing. Where is that? Ah, yeah, actually did that over here. So there's a little magnifier over here, which I am going to go look into how that's happening, because that sounds like a fun thing to do for my sketches as well. I'd like to be able to say, okay, I'm talking about the sketch, but highlight as a section for easier looking at. Community-wise, FOSDEM, what's going on is going on. People are like posting stuff about having enjoyed it, so it's either currently going on or it's done. FOSDEM is a big open source free and open source software conference, plus a lot of community stuff. And there is a community track, so if you're curious about the community plumbing thing that I mentioned at the start of this live stream, you can go check that one out. Apparently there are lots of interesting talks, so that's cool. And lots of other stuff. Let's go see what yeah. So yes, that's kind of my Emacs news highlights. You might have slightly different Emacs news highlights. Totally cool. Everybody gets something different out of it. So let me switch back to the chat, and then I can start saying hello to other people who have dropped by. So like, hello DJ and DJ Cthulhu and Data Monoid and everybody else who's watching. It's very quiet. It's very strange. The kiddo is not woken up yet, so I guess I can just keep taking advantage of this time. Okay, where was I? I'm experimenting with org modern and variable pitch, but I'm not sure if I'm doing this entirely well. At least the headlines are bigger now, so we're gonna see if that changes things in making my org files a little bit more manageable when I am wandering around. Let's see. Oh yeah, we can find out what else I've added to my configuration recently. I have this bad habit of forgetting to actually forgetting to add things. Oh yeah, so I've added whatchamacallit, yes, so captions. I very much like having captions and transcripts, partly because I'm using these live streams as an opportunity to brain dump text for blog posts and presentations and things like that, right? So if I look at my my recent post, for example, for Yay Emacs, I'll take you through the source code for it behind the scenes. So now I have these caption links. So subed, I'm playing around with it first, but this will export the a section of my captions without my having to do any more like manual fiddling around with it. Okay, I need to actually load this up. Okay, all right. So this is the subed file. Why is it not subed mode? I think my configuration only partially loaded. So subed allows you to edit the captions while having the video right beside it, which is handy because then I can jump around and correct things and so forth. But the thing that I added to it recently was being able to export a section of the transcript with the times so that I can synchronize them. So that's fairly straightforward now. And then if I want to edit the text a bit more, then I can also have a function that specifies the start and the end, and then exports that part of the text with the time stamps on it at least for the paragraphs. And what that does is it makes this, let me bring up a blog post. So it makes this part over here so that I can click on, theoretically, I will eventually be able to click on something in order to jump to that specific point. Or at least in the meantime, you can look at the times and go to it. So there's something that needs fiddling with for the JavaScript to have that synchronized, but step by step, right? So this part over here, so when I publish a blog post about my live streams, I want to be able to include the video. I want to include the transcripts. I want to have times on the transcripts so that people can jump to the specific section if they want more details. And I also want to be able to have my own structure around it. So for example, might want to have headings, or I might want to have lists, or something like that. So if I have both the ability to put in extracts from the transcript, as well as use OrgBabel to evaluate the code that gives me the transcript, so that then I can fiddle around with, I can copy and paste into a separate section and do my own editing, then I think that's pretty cool. So that's another thing that I worked on recently, for that. And the reason I do that is because I have very little patience when it comes to going through things. Aforementioned, not having a lot of computer time, so I like skimming through transcripts, and I like finding text in them, and I like jumping to specific sections. And I want to make that as easy as possible as well for other people who are watching this stuff, which gives me then the freedom to blather on about stuff while knowing that if there's something interesting, people can go find it again afterwards. So the process of getting that transcript, a rough version of the automatic speech recognition version, it's fairly easy. I can just use my deepgram recognize audio command to do it, and then I can turn that into a blog post with very little editing, and then people can go figure out, eventually this can be polished into something that makes more sense, because I tend to go off in tangents and repeat words and use filler words and all that stuff. But yes, okay. So so that is a thing that is in my config now. Okay, so that's another change in my yeah. Okay, so those are all the changes I did for this week. Hooray! I should remember to add that. This is touch. Whoop. Okay, don't panic. All right. I'm gonna say compile, create commit. Yes, I want all the commits. Okay. Different changes. Okay. So this was touch gestures. This is good. This is this is a good reminder for me to go actually commit things. Wdiff video export. I think that was it. Okay. Okay, so there is a the question here is trying to use the org table as a vocabulary manager. And what do you do if you have multiple languages for each column, such as English, Tamil, and Mandarin, and you're having problems with misalignment? I'm not sure whether oh, good, other people have the same question. Okay, I'm not sure whether specifying the column width is going to be enough, or maybe like different column widths. Do you know that you can? Okay, so if you have a table, column 1, column 2, column 3, you might have really long stuff. You can specify, I think, the width this way. It's not working. Okay, control HIM, org mode, table, column width, and alignment. Okay. let's see if we can get that to work. So theoretically, that should have aligned it. But maybe it doesn't. Control C should have split it up. I wonder if org modern is playing around with this. Okay, I am not entirely sure. That might be a good question for the org mode mailing list. They are very helpful over there. So unlike Emacs Devel, which can sometimes be a little terse, I guess, org mode is specifically set up so that our mailing list has help and development questions and everything in one place. So it tends to be the place to go for questions because they are cool. There's also an org mode subreddit where sometimes people have shared questions like that and tips like that too. So I would recommend if you write about what you've done so far and where you're getting stuck, then either the org mode mailing list or the org mode subreddit, which is at reddit.com/r/org mode. Those might be the two good places to ask org mode specific questions, because chances are no matter what workflow you are trying to figure out, someone out there has the exact same itch and has figured something out. Okay. All right. How to find yes. There's also an OrgMeetup. I'll point that out because it is awesome and because Ihor writes such lovely notes. So there is an OrgMeetup, which I think he actually tries to organize about monthly. And it's always great fun. So, and then he has like really, really like detailed notes on how to do it, including, you know, bug reports or interesting features that people are playing around with, and so on and so forth. So OrgMeetup is a third place to go if you want help with org things, and they are very lovely. Yes. So and then Data Monoid points out that there's a matrix room, and Yantar, who's one of the org maintainers, is around there too, so you can ask. There's also an org mode channel on Libera chat, so yes, places to ask for help. Yes, and there's a question here about, you know, how to find help in Emacs. So of course you can find documentation inside Emacs itself using the info manual, like the way you saw me look things up right there too. And Control HF, which is describe function. But let's say that you need help going beyond that. There is the Help New Emacs mailing list. And people ask a variety of questions there. If you're starting with a starter kit like Doom Emacs, then you'll also want to check out the community that's specific to that starter kit, because starter kits come with like thousands of lines of code that modify the, you know, Emacs experience. So it can be challenging for people who are using vanilla Emacs or a different distribution of, like a different starter kit, different configuration of Emacs, to figure out where you're starting from if you're using a starter kit that's different from theirs. So that's check out if you're using a starter kit, check out that starter kits community as well. As I mentioned, there's an Emacs subreddit, and I see a lot of people asking questions in that too. It's very helpful. People often post snippets and say, okay, this is what I figured out so far, but I'm getting stuck. Or they ask questions and how to do things. So that's all that is good stuff. So just slightly annoying ads wise, but you can skip past them. And helpfulness. And then there's the IRC channels are on libera.chat. There's a Emacs channel, and there's, like, you know, org mode, and I think there's an Emacs beginner one as well. Those tend to look like they're off topic most of the time because people are chatting, but sometimes if you come in with an Emacs question, then people will go and answer them if somebody knows the answer. It can be a little hit or miss because you don't know whether someone who's got the same interest is on at the same time, but if you're looking for kind of a quick back and forth, that's another place to drop by. Yeah, and why is babysitter my, you know, really? Okay. Like suggested search. Anyway, so that is cool. Other places to ask for help. Yeah, yeah, posting in on the mailing list or in Reddit. There's also an Emacs Stack Exchange. I don't know how active it is. Sometimes I see links to posts on it. So that's another place. But yeah, lots of places to go find somebody who has a similar kind of thing. And speaking of finding someone who's got a similar kind of thing, there is conversation about what is it that makes Emacs fun for you, which I was going to point out in the upcoming Emacs news, because it's kind of, it's interesting to see the kinds of things that resonate with people. So that's one of the discussions that's out there on the Emacs subreddit. Huh. Okay. My voice is starting to give out, so in maybe 5 minutes, I'm going to wrap up. Plus, also, I want to make sure that the transcript isn't so long that I end up with like this mile-long blog post afterwards. But my idea, plans for, oh, excellent. So Data Moite says that Emacs Stack Exchange is actually fairly active, and they got some clarification on display line numbers mode. So there's yet another place to go and ask questions. And long term, I highly, highly recommend using Emacs to write your notes about Emacs learning and then posting that as a blog, because it'll help you as you think through the stuff that you want help with, and B, it will help. If it's up there, then people can come across it and they can be helped by your notes as well, which builds good karma. And C, when you write about something, inevitably someone will come along and say, oh yeah, there's a better way to do that. It's happened to me numerous times. I get very excited about something clever I figured out, and then someone points out that it's a built-in package for it. So I highly recommend taking notes and sharing them. And again, you don't have to be an expert. In fact, it's really good to do this as a beginner starting out. Org mode makes it very easy to do so. You can, post to a WordPress blog, or you can publish your site directly from org mode, and then you take advantage of org mode's literate programming support to have your code and your notes all together, so that helps you remember things, and that helps other people understand the context. And who knows, maybe they'll get inspired by what you're doing and they'll go back to your archive and share even more tips and so on. So it's all very good stuff. So highly recommend, if you are asking for help, in addition to sharing what you've been doing so far in your like Reddit or mailing list post or whatever, once you figure these things out, please take your notes and put them somewhere, ideally somewhere public, so that when people are searching for the same kind of question in the future, they can find your notes. So that would be awesome. Thank you very much. And then you can tell me about it so that I can put it in Emacs news, and we can keep those ideas flowing. So going back to the whole thing. Oh yes, so Common points out there is help on help, which I think, yeah, so question mark gives you, so Control H is the typical command shortcut for help. It might be different depending on your distro, but depending on your like Emacs starter kit setup or whatever. But Control H is what it is in mine. And the question mark here shows you kind of more of a menu, which you can use space to scroll through. And there's also like a quick help, so that just stays around. Control H, Control Q is quick help. So this just gives you the kind of very quick cheat sheet. This is actually configurable, and I was playing around with tweaking it, but I'm waiting for them to figure out kind of other ways to add more stuff to it, so I can have my mode specific help on it more easily. Yes, so there's a lot of help, a lot, which is great. But sometimes you don't even know what to look for, and that's where talking to other people about Emacs is very helpful, because help is great if you know what you're looking for, and reading through the manual is another way to learn the words to look for. But sometimes you're just like, I want to do this thing and I'm getting stuck. What do I need to do? So that's where you go. Yes. And as Colin pointed out, looking at the source code is often also very helpful. In my previous, I think it was just the last one, yes. In my previous post, in my previous Yay Emacs thing, I went into how you can use helpful to look at the source code of something when you're just looking at the function description. And highly recommend that. Also highly recommend using edebug to slowly work your way through a function. This is if you're, once you've started to get the hang of Emacs Lisp, edebug is super helpful. If you don't know what edebug is yet, I can very quickly squeeze in a quick, demonstration, I'm sure. Let's take a look at that lorem ipsum thing that I just used. That should be fairly straightforward since it just inserts things. Paragraphs. Okay, so here, if you use, I don't even know what the menu way to do with this. Okay, meta-x edebug the fun, which is, I think, control meta-x. Then when you call it, so let's say, for example, I say meta-x insert paragraphs, then it will allow you to interactively step through things by pressing space. So this is edebug. It lets you walk through a function and see where it's actually going. You can press E to evaluate things. So for example, if I want to see what num is, I can press E, type num, and it will show me the value, which is 4 at the moment because I called it with a universal prefix argument. So I said insert four paragraphs, please. And it will show you the values of things, assuming you don't accidentally get out of the thing. So, mystery. Oh, I think I still have keycord mode on. Should not do that. Keycord mode. No, I don't have keycord mode on. I don't know why I accidentally did that twice then. All right. Wrong argument. Okay. Word buffer. Yes, make sure I don't have anything. No, I did not want to do that. Okay, let's go back to this. This is undo tree. Undo tree is going to help me get back to where I was. All right. This is the buffer that I wanted to revert. Yes. That's the thing that I wanted to run. Okay. Sometimes I have a problem where when I'm debugging, it switches for some reason into like insertion. But now it's working. Okay, so you can see they're stepping through it properly now that I am not panicking. That's how it works. Interestingly, this one does it recursively. How strange. Okay, all right. So that's edebug. The other thing that you can do while you're debugging, by the way, is take a look at this menu. A lot of people turn the menus off because it saves them that little fraction of real estate, screen real estate, but it's actually very helpful to use it, especially when you're exploring something new for the first time, because then you can see the kinds of functions that people recommend checking out. Like you can do step with space, which is what I was doing, and T automatically runs through things. It's called trace. Trace fast does it faster. But also you can start to look at the different submenus here. So for example, you can jump to a specific section. It'll tell you what the keyboard shortcuts are for it as well. And you can use breaks. So one of the things I played around with, I think a few months ago, was setting a conditional breakpoint, which I knew there was there had to be a way to do it. I just wasn't sure what to call it, but looking through the menu helped me find it. So that's another way to find the words for things, and so on. So if you want to look at the backtrace, you can use D for backtrace. And if you want to evaluate something, then you can do that. Yeah, so that's edebug. Hey, there's an option for test coverage. I should go check that out. So edebug is very helpful. And when you're done with edebugging, you can press G to just keep going. And then you can evaluate everything again to take off the edebug instrumentation and just run it as a normal function. All right, I really should wrap up because my voice is starting to say, you're not used to this much talking in one go. But thank you very much for joining me. I will try to get this transcript up and edited sometime in the next few days. And next week, let's see if I can manage to squeeze in a little bit of time for coding. It's unlikely because, as I previously mentioned, the kiddo gets screen envy. So I'm probably going to be focusing on things that I can sneak in with a drawing. Fortunately, lots of other people are doing great Emacs tutorial videos. You should go check them out if you haven't yet. Protesolao Starro, you've got like System Crafters with David Wilson, Emacs Elements. There's a whole bunch of Emacs channels, and I include links to those videos in Emacs News, which comes out usually Mondays, sometimes Tuesdays if things are very busy. And so go check them out. I am probably going to be focusing on the things that I can do without necessarily looking up code or writing lots of expressions because, again, very limited computer time. So I don't know what that looks like. I'm like thinking, okay, what is podcast friendly? So I'm not assuming people can see my screen, and what is my life friendly in that I'm going to assume that I'm not going to be at the computer figuring out the code. But we'll figure it out. It's probably going to involve more drawings. So we'll see. Eventually, someday I'll have more computer time, but that time is not yet now. So thank you for joining me, and we'll might see you again next week. We'll see. Bye.